The shadow warriors of ancient India, the deadly art of the Vishkanya. On a moonless night in 300 BCE, as the autumn winds swept through the grand palace of Magadha, King Chandragupta's most trusted general collapsed at the royal feast. His final words were not of pain or fear, but of bewilderment. Her touch was like silk. The beautiful courtesan who had brushed against him earlier that evening had already vanished into the shadows of history, leaving behind only whispers of an ancient order of female assassins whose very bodies were crafted into living weapons. They were the Vishkanya, the poison maidens of ancient India, and their story would reshape our understanding of power, sacrifice, and the deadly arts of antiquity. In the centuries that followed, these shadow warriors would become both legend and nightmare, their true nature obscured by time and terror. Some called them monsters, others hailed them as liberators. But in the ancient Sanskrit texts and crumbling temple walls, in the secret manuals of forgotten martial arts and the desperate letters of dying kings, lies a truth more fascinating than any myth. The story of women who devoted their lives to becoming living weapons, their bodies transformed through years of careful poisoning until their very kiss could kill. This is their story, a tale of power, seduction, and the deadly art of the Vishkanya. The enigmatic legacy of the Vishkanya, poison maidens of ancient India. The first Vishkanya emerged not from the grand courts of emperors, but from the desperate ingenuity of the small kingdom of Visha, nestled in the shadows of the Vindhya mountains. In 600 BCE, faced with invasion by a vastly superior force, Queen Parmika made a decision that would alter the course of warfare. Instead of building walls, she would create shadows. Deep in the kingdom's ancient forests, where rare plants bloomed under moonlight and serpents guarded forgotten shrines, the queen established the first Vishkanya Shala, the House of Poison Maidens. Young women were chosen not for their beauty or strength, but for an extraordinary genetic quirk, their bodies' unusual resistance to toxins. The training began with drops of clarified butter mixed with tiny amounts of venom, administered daily in gradually increasing doses. Many died. Those who survived began to change. The ancient text, Vishkanya Shastra, fragments of which were discovered in a sealed clay pot in 1924, reveals the brutal sophistication of their methods. The girl becomes the poison, it reads. Her sweat carries death, her breath weakens enemies, and in her kiss lies the power of 1,000 scorpions. Modern toxicologists have confirmed the possibility. Certain combinations of organic poisons, gradually introduced, could indeed create human beings whose bodily fluids became toxic to others while leaving the carrier unharmed. But the genius of the Vishkanya lay not in mere poison craft. They mastered the arts of astronomy to time their strikes with celestial events, studied architecture to exploit the acoustic properties of royal halls, and learned the subtle politics of every major court. A Vishkanya could identify 47 different types of laughs, each revealing specific vulnerabilities in a target's personality. They developed a secret language of gesture and breath, allowing them to communicate across crowded rooms without speaking a word. In 542 BCE, the effectiveness of Queen Parmika's program revealed itself in spectacular fashion. The invading army's supreme commander was found dead in his tent, a peaceful smile on his face. No wounds marked his body. The only clue, a faint trace of perfume and a single long hair on his pillow. Within weeks, 3 more generals died under similar circumstances. The invasion collapsed. More significantly, the legend of the Vishkanya was born. The Vishkanya Shala's technique spread, evolving as they moved from kingdom to kingdom. Each region added its own refinements. The curry masters of the south contributed their knowledge of spice-based toxins. The mountain kingdoms added techniques for using cold to enhance poison potency. The coastal cities developed methods involving sea creatures whose venoms left no trace. By 500 BCE, no royal court was considered complete without its own cadre of poison maidens, though their presence was never officially acknowledged. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the Vishkanya legacy was their code. Unlike common assassins, they saw themselves as living embodiments of Kali's divine justice. The Vishkanya Shastra speaks of strict rules: no innocent targets, no collateral casualties, no deaths without purpose. "We are not murderers," reads one surviving fragment. "We are the scalpel that removes disease from the body of society." This philosophical foundation would influence covert operations for centuries to come. The art and science of the Vishkanya, poison maidens. To understand the extraordinary science of the Vishkanya, one must first forget everything they know about conventional toxicology. The ancient Sanskrit text Rasajanika describes a training process so methodical, so precise, that modern scientists initially dismissed it as fantasy until they began testing its principles in the lab. Training began at moonrise on the summer solstice. Each initiate received a copper cup containing what appeared to be ordinary milk, but was in fact a carefully calibrated mixture of 16 different substances, each chosen for its specific interaction with human biology. The first cup contained particles of crystal snake venom, processed through a method that would not be rediscovered until the 20th century. Proteins denatured by moonlight, their molecular structure altered to bypass normal immune responses. By the third month, survivors moved to the second phase, immersion. In underground chambers carved from living rock, initiates spent hours submerged in pools infused with diluted toxins. The water was kept precisely at body temperature. Modern research shows this temperature maximizes absorption through skin membranes. Sacred texts speak of women emerging from these pools with skin that shimmered in moonlight, their bodies fundamentally transformed at the cellular level. The psychological training proved even more revolutionary. Vishkanya masters developed techniques for altering consciousness that neuroscientists are only now beginning to understand. Initiates learned to control their autonomic nervous system, adjusting their body temperature and heart rate at will. More incredibly, they mastered the art of microsleep, the ability to rest one hemisphere of the brain while keeping the other alert, a skill previously thought unique to dolphins and certain birds. But the most astonishing discovery comes from a recently translated manuscript found in a forgotten monastery. The Vishkanya had decoded the relationship between emotional states and toxin effectiveness. They learned that fear, anger, or hesitation could destabilize their carefully cultivated poison resistance. Only perfect emotional control, a state they called the stillness between heartbeats, allowed them to safely carry their lethal arsenal within their own bodies. Success in training came at an almost unimaginable price. Ancient records from one training center show that of 64 initiates who began the program in the year 463 BCE, only 7 survived to take their final vows. Yet those who emerged possessed abilities that seemed to defy natural law. A single tear from a fully trained Vishkanya could kill within hours. A kiss could stop a heart between beats. Even their sweat could induce paralysis if they willed it. The final test came without warning. After years of training, each initiate faced what they called the Night of Last Breath, a ritual so secret that only fragments of its description survive. What we do know comes from a single palm leaf manuscript. She must dance with death until death itself grows weary. Those who emerged from this mysterious ordeal were no longer mere assassins. They had become living embodiments of an ancient art that blurred the line between science and sorcery, between the possible and the miraculous. The ingenious arsenal of the Vishkanya. The deadliest weapon in a Vishkanya's arsenal was never the poison itself, but rather the exquisite sophistication of its delivery. A recently discovered cache of bronze instruments in a forgotten temple near Nalanda revealed tools so precisely crafted that they could only be fully appreciated under magnification. Hollow needles thinner than a human hair. Rings with microscopic reservoirs activated by specific finger movements. Combs that could detect poison in a victim's food by changing color when waved over a plate. Their botanical knowledge surpassed anything seen in the ancient world. The Vishkanya cultivated gardens that doubled as botanical weapons labs, creating hybrid plants whose properties defied conventional wisdom. They developed a species of lotus that, when properly processed, could be woven into silk-like fabric that absorbed toxins from the environment and released them on command. More remarkably, they mastered the art of poison programming, creating toxic compounds that would only activate under specific conditions, at certain temperatures, when mixed with particular foods, or even at precise times of day. The greatest testament to their ingenuity lies in what they didn't use. Unlike crude assassins who relied on obvious weapons, the Vishkanya turned everyday objects into instruments of death. A flute whose music induced temporary paralysis. Ink that released its deadly potential only when heated by a reader's hands. Most ingenious of all, scented oils that seemed harmless when tested, but became lethal when combined with the natural chemistry of their target's skin. In the courts of Magadha, Vishkanya operatives pioneered what they called cascading deaths, carefully orchestrated sequences of seemingly unrelated events that would culminate in their target's demise. A particular combination of spices would weaken the liver over weeks. A specific sequence of sounds would disturb sleep patterns. A carefully timed series of emotional triggers would stress the heart. Each element appeared natural in isolation. Together, they formed an invisible web of mortality. Their mastery extended beyond mere toxins. The Vishkanya developed techniques for manipulating light and shadow that would not be rediscovered until the advent of modern stage magic. They could appear to vanish in plain sight by exploiting the peculiarities of human visual perception. Ancient texts speak of their ability to step between heartbeats, a technique that allowed them to move through crowded rooms without registering an observer's memory. But perhaps their most sophisticated tool was information itself. Each Vishkanya carried in her mind an intricate map of human anatomy, far more detailed than anything recorded in surviving medical texts. They understood pressure points that could induce specific emotions, nerve clusters that could trigger precise memories, and subtle energy pathways that could be manipulated to alter consciousness. This knowledge, passed down orally and never fully written, transformed their entire bodies into precision instruments. The true sophistication of their methodology became clear only in failure, or rather the suspicious lack of it. In over 3 centuries of recorded operations, not a single Vishkanya was ever conclusively proven to have carried out an assassination, despite their widely acknowledged presence in every major court. Their tools and techniques were so subtle, so perfectly crafted, that even when they succeeded, they left behind only questions and whispers. Queens and Daggers: The Rise and Legacy of the Vishkanya. In the spring of 318 BCE, Queen Durdara of the Mauryan Empire attended a feast that would change the course of Indian history. As she raised a golden cup to her lips, her husband Chandragupta, not yet the empire's founder, knocked it from her hand. The cup's contents left permanent stains on the marble floor. This incident, recorded in court chronicles, marked the first documented attempt by rival powers to eliminate both a future emperor and his Vishkanya-trained queen in a single stroke. The attempted assassination transformed Durdara. Court records show her establishing an unprecedented network of female spies and informants across the subcontinent. Within months, mysterious deaths plagued every court that had opposed Chandragupta's rise to power. A prince in Magadha found paralyzed in his garden. A general in Kalinga discovered in his bed, smiling but cold. A spy master in Gandhara who simply vanished, leaving behind only a lingering scent of lotus blossoms. The greatest political coup of the Vishkanya occurred during the succession crisis of Kalinga in 289 BCE. 5 princes claimed the throne, each backed by powerful armies. Civil war seemed inevitable. Then, over a single moon cycle, 4 of the princes withdrew their claims, each citing mysterious dreams and inexplicable feelings of dread. The 5th prince, who ascended unopposed, would later become one of Ashoka the Great's most loyal allies. Palace records, recently unearthed, reveal the presence of 4 highly placed courtesans who departed the kingdom on the same night, their duties mysteriously completed. But not all Vishkanya operations ended in death. In 276 BCE, the ambassador from Parthia arrived in Pataliputra with plans to negotiate an invasion alliance against the Mauryan Empire. He left 3 days later, having signed a trade treaty instead. No threat or violence was recorded, yet his personal diary, discovered centuries later, speaks of a dreamlike few days and a strange certainty that war would bring only ruin. Among his retinue was noted a captivating storyteller who shared his evening meals. The political influence of the Vishkanya reached its apex during the reign of Queen Naganika of the Satavahana dynasty. Never before or since has history recorded a ruler who so masterfully wielded the threat of unseen power. Her court became famous for its peace and stability, despite being surrounded by aggressive neighbors. When asked about her defense strategy, she would simply smile and adjust her poison rings, a gesture that sent waves of terror through ambitious rivals. Yet the Vishkanya's most remarkable political achievement may have been one of mercy. In 244 BCE, a plot to assassinate King Ashoka was uncovered in its final stages. Instead of the expected brutal reprisal, every conspirator received the same dream on the same night, a vision so terrifying that they voluntarily entered monasteries the next day, transforming would-be killers into devoted Buddhist monks. The official record credits divine intervention. The unofficial histories note the arrival of 3 sisters from the south, skilled in the arts of spiritual persuasion. The decline of their political influence came not through defeat, but through their own choice. As the classical age of Indian history waned, the Vishkanya themselves engineered their gradual disappearance from the corridors of power. The last confirmed operation took place in 180 BCE, when an entire royal court fell into a deep sleep during a solar eclipse. They awakened to find their kingdom's political structure subtly but permanently altered, though no one could quite explain how or why. Unveiling the secrets of ancient Indian biochemical mastery. In 1923, British archaeologist Catherine Summers made a discovery that would shake the foundations of ancient Indian military history. Deep in a forgotten chamber beneath the ruins of Nalanda, she uncovered a sealed bronze vessel containing what appeared to be ordinary sand. Chemical analysis revealed something extraordinary. The sand consisted of crystallized organic compounds that, when rehydrated, still retained their toxic properties after 2,000 years, a preservation technique unknown to modern science. The real breakthrough came in 1967, when a massive cache of palm leaf manuscripts was discovered in a cave system near Ajanta. Among them was a partially preserved training manual that contained something unprecedented: detailed molecular diagrams of poison compounds, drawn with such precision that modern chemists initially refused to believe their age. These diagrams depicted atomic structures that would not be discovered by Western science until the 19th century. Modern forensic analysis of ancient remains has provided startling corroboration of Vishkanya accounts. A team at Delhi University recently examined preserved tissue samples from 3 suspected victims, dating from 300 to 250 BCE. They found evidence of systematic poisoning so subtle it would have been undetectable with anything less than 21st century technology. More intriguingly, the poisons appeared to have been administered in mathematically precise sequences that suggested an understanding of biochemistry far beyond their era. The architectural evidence proves equally compelling. In 2003, acoustic engineers studying the design of ancient Indian royal courts identified hidden chambers specifically constructed to carry whispers across vast distances. These poison rooms, as they were called in ancient texts, contained sophisticatedly engineered ventilation systems that could selectively distribute airborne compounds to specific locations within the palace technology that wouldn't be replicated until the advent of modern air conditioning. DNA analysis of preserved hair samples found in sealed crypts dating to the Mauryan period revealed something even more extraordinary. Several specimens showed genetic markers indicating gradual adaptation to toxic substances, evidence of systematic exposure over generations. This suggests the Vishkanya weren't just trained, they were selectively bred for their resistance to poisons, creating bloodlines of natural immunity that would have seemed miraculous to their contemporaries. The linguistic evidence provides its own revelations. A detailed analysis of ancient Sanskrit texts revealed a sophisticated code language embedded within seemingly innocent poetry. What appeared to be simple verses about lotus blossoms and moonlight contained detailed chemical formulas and operational instructions. This code remained unbroken until 2012. When a quantum computing algorithm finally deciphered its patterns. Perhaps most compelling are the absences in the historical record. In an age where every significant military victory was carved into stone or preserved in epic poems, the Vishkanya's greatest successes appear as mysterious gaps, inexplicable changes in political direction, unexpected peace treaties, and sudden shifts in alliance that shaped the course of ancient India. These silences, as modern historians now recognize, may be the loudest testimony to their effectiveness. The hidden legacy, ancient Vishkanya, influence on modern practices. When the CIA established its first female operative training program in 1942, the architects of the program studied an unexpected source: ancient Sanskrit texts describing Vishkanya methodologies. The Russians, it turns out, had done the same. A declassified KGB manual from 1957 contains entire sections that mirror Vishkanya techniques for emotional manipulation and undetectable influence, though neither agency publicly acknowledged their ancient inspiration. In the mountains of Kerala, a secret society of female martial artists still practices what they call the subtle arts. Their training includes meditation techniques identical to those described in Vishkanya texts, though they focus on healing rather than harm. During a rare interview in 2019, their eldest master demonstrated the ability to alter her body temperature at will and detect poison in food through changes in her peripheral vision, abilities long thought legendary. The pharmaceutical industry unwittingly rediscovered Vishkanya principles in 2005 when developing new drug delivery systems. A groundbreaking study on time-release medications used molecular structures eerily similar to those depicted in ancient Vishkanya diagrams. The lead researcher, upon seeing the ancient drawings, reportedly exclaimed, "They knew!" They actually knew. The study was mysteriously discontinued, though its initial findings revolutionized targeted drug therapy. Modern forensic science has begun adopting investigation techniques that mirror Vishkanya methods. The ancient practice of reading the silent voice, analyzing subtle physical tells to detect deception, has found new life in behavioral analysis programs. FBI profilers now study micro-expressions and involuntary gestures in ways that would feel familiar to a Vishkanya operative, though few know the historical connection. The most profound legacy may lie in the field of neuroscience. The Vishkanya understanding of consciousness, their ability to operate in what they called the space between thoughts, has attracted serious attention from researchers studying human potential. A 2021 study at Stanford University documented practitioners of certain Indian martial arts achieving states of awareness that defy conventional neurological models. In the world of modern espionage, the Vishkanya's influence emerges in unexpected ways. The Israeli Mossad's female operative training program, considered among the world's most sophisticated, includes elements that can be traced directly to Vishkanya protocols. Their emphasis on invisible influence over direct action, psychological manipulation over physical force, mirrors the ancient approach with stunning fidelity. But perhaps their most relevant legacy lies in their philosophical approach to power. In an age of drone strikes and cyber warfare, the Vishkanya principle of minimal footprint, achieving maximum effect through minimal intervention, offers a compelling alternative to brute force. Military strategists have begun studying their methods not for their lethality, but for their precision and psychological sophistication. Shadows of Influence: The Resurgence of Vishkanya in the Modern World. On a quiet evening in 2022, during a closed-door session at the United Nations, a senior intelligence official left a cryptic note for her colleagues. Some shadows never fade. The context remained classified, but sources suggest the discussion centered on a series of bloodless diplomatic victories by a rising Asian power victories that defied conventional political analysis. In the margins of the note was a small drawing of a lotus flower. The recent rise of all-female special operations units across Asia hints at a resurrection of ancient methodologies. India's newly formed Durga Division trains its operatives in what they call comprehensive influence, a system combining psychological warfare, stealth tactics, and botanical chemistry that bears striking parallels to Vishkanya techniques. Their motto, translated from Sanskrit, reads, "Victory without violence." Silicon Valley's obsession with biohacking and consciousness expansion has led to an unexpected rediscovery of Vishkanya mental training techniques. Tech billionaires now pay extraordinary sums to learn ancient meditation methods that promise enhanced mental control and sensory awareness. One prominent CEO caused a stir by claiming these techniques allowed her to read rooms with supernatural accuracy, a core Vishkanya skill. Yet the most intriguing development came in 2023, when satellite imagery revealed unusual heat signatures in the Vindhya Mountains, the same region where the first Vishkanya Shala was established. Local authorities reported nothing unusual, but witnesses described seeing women in dark clothing practicing strange movements under the full moon. When investigators arrived, they found only empty caves and the lingering scent of lotus blossoms. As artificial intelligence and cyber warfare dominate modern security concerns, the Vishkanya's ancient wisdom about subtle influence and invisible power seems increasingly prophetic. Their understanding that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the power to shape events without apparent action, offers a crucial lesson for our age of global interconnection and constant surveillance. Perhaps they never truly vanished. In a world where information flows like poison through digital veins, where influence can be more deadly than force, and where the greatest powers move unseen through the networks of global society, the art of the Vishkanya may not be ancient history at all. Their greatest achievement might be convincing the world they were only legends, while their daughters continue to dance between heartbeats, shaping history from the shadows. The old Sanskrit texts end with a warning that reads more like a promise. As long as power corrupts, as long as justice needs shadows to flourish, we will remain. Look for us in the spaces between what you think you know and what you fear might be true. We are the nightmare of tyrants, the whispered hope of the oppressed, and the guardians of a balance you will never see but always feel. In the end, perhaps that is their true legacy, not the arts of death, but the power of invisible change. In a world increasingly dominated by brute force and bold declarations, the subtle path of the Vishkanya offers an alternative. The possibility that the greatest changes come not from what we can see, but from what we cannot.